Coming up on AVANT, Technology Insights with Ken Presti.
People are looking for less work, not the same work. And a cloud-based system really should enable less work.
We're talking about Microsoft Teams as part of your overall communications architecture. Teams is very popular for use within companies, especially since it's bundled in Office 365. But what about the implications of extending it outward beyond the company boundaries? What are some of the things you need to think about? We'll explore this in depth in just a moment. Welcome to AVANT Technology Insights. I'm your host, Ken Presti, Research Vice President of AVANT Research and Analytics. The link between solving business challenges and cutting-edge technologies has become tighter and more complex than ever before. In this podcast series from AVANT Research and Analytics, we help enterprise decision makers sort through the business case, the value, the challenges, and ultimately the bottom line of technology adoption. So listen to us at your desktop, take us in the car, tune in from the commuter train, or download us at the gate. You'll find us on Apple, Spotify, and Google, as well as at www.goavant.net/podcast. Brent Wilford, thank you so much for joining us today. Lots of discussion around Teams, especially in relation to UCaaS and PBX capabilities these days. It's obviously Teams is free, or at least bundled within the Microsoft offering. And it doesn't have everything that it needs, but it has a lot, and that has seemed to have had some interesting market dynamics going on. Could you help me unpack those dynamics and what that means, especially given the fact that Microsoft is not a traditional telephony player?
Yes, well, hey, hopefully you have more than an hour to discuss that particular topic.
We can go on as long as we need.
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and it's front and center in almost every UCaaS project that I'm brought into today, right? And really, you probably have to go back a few years to really understand how we got to where we are today with Teams and the skyrocketing adoption that's happening in the marketplace today. Microsoft has been in the productivity application business for 13, 15 or so years. They started with Communicator, I think around 2007. That evolved into Lync, which eventually evolved into Skype for Business, and then eventually Microsoft has said the Teams interface, right, is going to be the dominant productivity software that Microsoft will be offering. And along the way, right, they've dabbled in additional functionality, right? You have the ability to make point-to-point voice calls, you have the ability to do chat and file share, and the Microsoft ecosystem has grown around that with SharePoint, with other tools that enterprises have relied on. And what you're seeing with Teams is really an evolution of all of those individual pieces of communication functionality really centered into a much more modern interface that, as you said, has been given away for free. So if I'm buying an E1 or an E3 license for my users to access PowerPoint and Word and other Microsoft features, well, hey, I have this pretty modern looking chat and point-to-point voice application. It's got meetings applications as well. Why not try and use that? Because it's already bundled in with what I'm purchasing for other services and projects inside my own company. But the one thing that Microsoft has not really had a dominant foothold in is enterprise voice. You had the ability to do that in Skype. It was very on-prem based, very not easy to set up. I think I talked to a lot of IT folks who said, yeah, our voice in Skype is great, but I don't think I talked to any end users who felt that way. So although it was technically possible, it just was not as good as the traditional global voice over IP providers. So there was not a lot of uptake with Skype for Business and voice. And with Teams, we're halfway there, right? Microsoft actually has a PBX function now. It's cloud-based. It has some enterprise functionality, but not full. So there is the basis for being able to rely on Microsoft and this cloud-based productivity tool to be some kind of a PBX. But the offering is incomplete in my opinion, and what I've researched here in the ecosystem.
Okay, because when I look at it from the standpoint of an enterprise decision maker, you pretty much had me at free. Okay, um, that was something that was like, okay, well, it's all bundled in, but it's
hmm
not quite to that extent. Give me a walkthrough of how much free costs in this type of situation, and what are the sorts of things that enterprises need to do in order to move in this direction.
Yeah, I'll start with an old adage a coworker of mine used to say, but free like a puppy, right? So day one it's free, but a few months into it, you got quite a bit of expenses that go along with that free acquisition.
That's a
Um,
great analogy.
yeah, but still love puppies. Please adopt. Um, so like I said, the basis for communication platform is there. Microsoft offers a PBX. You can buy a phone system license and communication credits, or a calling plan as they call it. And you can just download Teams. You can buy a Teams approved desk phone. You can use the mobile app. You can use Microsoft um, for your communications. But the offering, right, Microsoft's offering around that does not meet up with, or is not at the maturity level of other global voice providers. For instance, the Microsoft SLA only applies to desk phones. It does not apply to soft phones or mobile app. There's not an 800 number to call to get support with Microsoft. So you either have to purchase those services from a certified professional to help you through that, or hire somebody with those certifications and rely on them staying up to speed and being able to support and administer the Microsoft PBX. So with a less than optimal SLA, with some enterprise features missing, right? I can't record calls to the PSTN. I can only record calls internally. Microsoft has created the framework for a PBX or a phone system, but really kind of stopped halfway through. And they've opened the door more, right, with direct routing that came about a little over a year ago. They basically said, hey, we're going to keep providing this framework, but we think it's better if we let the voice professionals, or people who've done this for decades, integrate into our cloud, integrate into our interface, which we want to be the chosen interface, and let them do the global voice, let them do the SIP trunking, let them do all the things that they're good at, just into our interface, which we're trying to get adopted globally.
Right. So it's no secret that a lot of companies, a lot of telephony vendors and people in that general space have jumped onto the bandwagon with this in terms of trying to fill those gaps. What how would you bucketize them if you look at them in kind of a categorized way?
hmm
What do you see coming together in terms of different types of companies that are picking up the various pieces left behind by Microsoft, or perhaps trying to pull all this together into a unified solution of their own?
Yeah, that's been the most interesting part of my 6 months of research into all the offerings that are potential when someone asks for a quote unquote Microsoft integration.
Mhm.
The most direct, right, and no pun intended here, but it's called direct routing. So there are vendors who basically are going to SIP trunk into the Microsoft cloud, into the Teams instance, and they are going to be the PSTN conduit, right? They are going to give you the access to the PSTN that people are saying, I don't like the Microsoft SLA, or I don't like the Microsoft PBX or its features. I want someone to augment that. I want someone to be in charge of my PSTN connectivity. And so I'm going to choose a vendor that has set up session border controllers, private connectivity between their cloud and the Microsoft cloud. I'm going to choose someone who's better at voice than Microsoft, in my estimation. And
Mhm.
there's even a division there. There are folks that just provide that PSTN access, right? Just the SIP trunking end of it to get you outside the organization. And then there are others who are layering on a UCAS seat on top of that. That provides additional functionality. Usually it provides better high availability and disaster recovery on top of the Microsoft platform. And there's a variance of offerings in either bucket. There's a variance in price. And really, it takes a good amount of time to speak with these different direct routing vendors, understand, hey, are they just doing the SIP connectivity, or are they layering on a UCAS seat, and what additional functionality is included? And really kind of comparing the two to say, hey, based on this customer's desired future state, which of these type of offerings would be better for them? And it takes a lot of discovery, both on the vendor side, but a lot more discovery on the customer side to really make sure that you're going into the right vendor selection for what they're trying to do. A
So what
smaller
you've teed up,
portion. Oh, sorry, Ken.
no, it's okay. What you've teed up is basically a Rubik's cube of options. It's a
Mhm.
multi-dimensional consideration there, kind of as you just said. If I'm the end customer and I'm looking at this, and you mentioned that they've got to have a lot of discussions on what they're going to do, what are some of the things that need to be part and parcel of those discussions? How do you start to even begin to flesh all this out?
Yeah, that is the crux of every UCAS sales engineer
Right.
here at AVANT, and pretty much in the ecosystem that we support. I think it all comes back to, regardless of the interface, right? Regardless of whether it's Teams or whether it's just a straight UCAS play, it all starts with listening. It all starts with understanding where the customer is today, the
Mhm.
benefits and the shortcomings of that system. Understanding what their users need, though, is more important. Um, usually IT decisions that are driven and forced down to multiple different personas or different end users across a wide global enterprise, unless you take the time to interview those folks, understand what they need, understand the importance of their job and how the communication tool fits into that, you're very unlikely to make a blind decision that will appease or make multiple groups inside your organization happy. So
Okay,
really, yeah.
take me a level deeper into that
Hmm.
point. What are some of the things that when you're in that discovery phase and you're asking those questions, what are some of the more common areas that you're going to drill down into to begin to get the first sense of what they're going to need?
Yeah, the most important thing you can do in the discovery phase is earn the trust of the IT group that's sponsoring you, right? That's in charge of this project, and convince them to get wider and outside of IT. There
Hmm.
are power users, there are vocal, respected people in every company outside of IT that should have a voice into large business decisions that affect their ability to do their job. And a communication platform is probably the most important one, where outside opinions, and when I say outside, I mean outside of IT, should be
Hmm.
taken into account. I always use the story back at my previous employer. I was meeting with a real estate company in Utah, and the IT team was convinced that their Skype rollout was successful, that everyone used it. They didn't need to look at video conferencing. They didn't need to look at chat applications. That was all handled by Skype. They just needed a voice replacement. We convinced them to bring in these folks. We had 9 or 10 people in a room, right? Human resources, marketing, sales, you name it, right? A variety of folks. And in the 30 minutes, we talked to them about how they did what it took for them to do their job for the day. We uncovered 6 or 7 different pieces of what we call shadow IT, right? Something that they
Hmm.
went out and purchased to replace Skype or augment Skype, because Skype didn't do what they needed to, or didn't do it the way that helped them do their job the best. And so instead of being less productive and using the tool that IT gave them, they went out and purchased and expensed other products, other chat applications, other video conferencing applications, other audio bridges, to get around the tool that IT gave them. And IT was just shocked, right? They didn't know that all of this was happening, that that the tool they chose wasn't good enough, and that the company was spending more money on these outside tools in addition to the money they already spent rolling out an unproductive tool.
Mhm. Now, did they really not know or did they not want to know? Because, I
That's
mean,
a good question.
IT can usually get a pretty good sense of what's going across the network. So if they don't know, I got to think that most of the time it's because they're not looking in that direction. And perhaps, on one level, I can even understand it because to the extent that you've got shadow IT going on, that demonstrates that whatever you've got in place isn't already working to the satisfaction of the users, and if they become brutally aware of the fact that what's there isn't to the satisfaction of the users, then they got to do something else. And these are already busy people. Is that
Hmm.
kind of what you see coming together here?
Yeah, IT does the best that they can, usually with the
Hmm.
limited resources they're given. Some companies really invest in technology and productivity tools. They understand where the world is moving. But unfortunately, I think a majority of companies still get by, right? They go, okay, we need a phone system, just go get the cheapest one you can, right? Just go get me dial tone, or go get me an application to do X. And if you start just giving point, single focused or siloed communication applications, you end up with, 5 or 6 different tools to do one thing. The reporting's all siloed. Think about what a new employee would go through, right? I start day one. Okay, here's 7 logins and 7 software applications to go download, and here's how you do this, and here's how you do that. So they don't mean to provide an unproductive tool. IT is very busy, right? They have a wide variety of responsibilities, and very important aspects of the business rely on their availability. So sometimes they just do the best they can. Sometimes they just do the best they can, provide a tool that should work, and then have to move on and go back to other projects. But communications, more and more, especially in the world we live in today, right? Office space is going to be changing based on this pandemic, based on what we've gone through in 2020. And I think that a communications infrastructure has jumped or surpassed the need for a physical building infrastructure. So you can create a work from anywhere scenario that will allow you to adapt and evolve and continue to work regardless of what the world throws at us, like it has this year. And really relying on an on-prem system, relying on desk phones, relying on something that forces employees into one singular building is just not the way to build an effective future-looking business these days. And I think investing in that communications infrastructure is a far better use of resources than it would be to invest in premise-based technology or even a physical building at this point.
Okay, so I'm looking at this from the standpoint of the enterprise decision maker. So I'm going to be talking to my key people and getting a sense of what it is that they need and how they like what we've already got in place, okay? I'm going to be looking also at what I'm already using to get a sense of what I can keep and what I need to throw out. Am I on the right track so far?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now as I take that a level deeper, I've got to take that information and then start working with my trusted advisor to start sorting those things out. And as I'm talking to that trusted advisor, they're going to drill me down into specific areas so that they can then turn that information around and translate it into specific offerings and specific vendors. What kind of information am I going to need to bring to the table in order to answer those questions that the trusted advisors need to know in order to make those recommendations?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, and I would love to find that to be our new future, where we're presented with that information proactively instead of having to dig it out. But what the type of information that an IT team should be looking for, right, in order to help start to delineate, right, what a good communication tool is for my company, is, like I said, just talking with the folks, right? How do you use the phone? How do you do conferencing? Are you desk phone based, right? Some personas are still desk phone based, right? Executive assistants, contact center agents. There are certain people that really just rely on a desk phone still, and that's fine. Find out what they need. But let's go to those other information workers. Let's go to mobile salespeople. Let's go to marketing, who's traveling around the country, people who aren't in an office every day. What do you need to be successful? Is it a soft phone? Is it a mobile application? Are you doing video conferencing? Are you doing chat? Who are you chatting with? Is it people inside the organization or outside the organization? And you really just start gathering, the different future state requirements or wish list of these different groups, and you start to combine them, right? You take what marketing said, what HR said, what sales said, and you start looking for commonalities. You start looking for things that seem to make sense. You're not going to be able to get every little feature that every group wants, more than likely. But if you take a holistic approach at getting different points of view and start collating those responses into something that seems to be meaningful across the spectrum, then you have a pretty good foundation of what you're looking for. And then probably through multiple demonstrations, once the trusted advisor can take that desired future state, compare it against the different vendors in our portfolio, and bring 3 or 4 forward, now you start getting the opinions of those folks. Okay, this interface, right? Because it's really about the interface. Features and functions are fairly table stakes these days. You're going to find 90 to 95% of UCaaS vendors all offer the same features. That buttons just might be in a different place. but you're really looking for buy-in from those users that you have interviewed. Hey, which of these interfaces that we're showing you seems to be the one that you would adopt more? What's easier for you to use? What's pleasing to the eye? What's easy to adopt for you and your team, right? Whether you have millennials or whether you have older workers in your workforce, what do you think will fit the needs of your folks better visually? And so you start to get a marrying up between the features and functions that they said in the discovery phase of what they wanted, and now how is that visually represented in front of me in the software I'm looking at to say, yes, if you went with this, I would use it, my team would use it, you can invest in this because we will adopt it. We're not going to go around you based on what we see here.
Okay, that's interesting. So you got features and functionality, and those have gotten pretty homogenous, and that's very consistent with what we've been hearing all along, because I've been in the midst of working on this 612 report on UCAS, and that's exactly what I've been hearing from a lot of different people, that somebody will come up with a technical differentiator and then everybody else will come up to speed around them. So, okay, so you identify these things, you look at the interfaces and get a sense of what your people like and what they're comfortable with. Now, how much of this also brings in the legacy systems and the applications that work around it? Are those all pretty much interchangeable, or to what extent does that limit your options as you go through the process?
Yep. So it's a great next step here, right? So we've talked about what our users want, and we've talked about what interface that they're willing to accept, and now that's one part of it. But also the IT team, right? They have to think about, okay, how reliable is this product? Is it highly available? Does it have disaster recovery abilities? Is it going to be up when my users need it? How easy is it for me to administer, right? To do daily activities, moves, adds, changes, deletes. And then, like you said, can it integrate with the other lines of business applications that we rely on, or at least the different departments rely on, in order to get their work done? And that you need to start understanding, where do those applications reside? Are they still on premise, right? Are they homegrown applications that we've used for years here in the office? Or are they cloud-based, right? Have we started moving those to the cloud as well? Or is our CRM in the cloud? Is our ERP system in the cloud, right? We've already moved to Office 365 or G Suite. So understanding what those line of business applications are and who uses them now starts to fill in the rest of the puzzle, right? So we have the user interface, and now we have to start the productivity phase, right? How is it going to interface the same or better into these applications that my previous system did, right? So we don't ever want to take a step back. We only want to take steps forward. And so understanding those must-haves, right, from the legacy system, and make sure that they get translated either directly or indirectly into the new system is another piece of the evaluation that IT has to be aware of.
And what about, let's kick this up a notch. Let's look at multinational corporations. How is it different for them? Because there could be different rules and regulations and restrictions and things in different geographies, different countries, different governmental agencies that have impacts, things along those lines.
Yeah, no, that opens up a whole different can of worms, Ken. A lot of global companies have had to do that themselves, right? If you are 30,000 employees and you're in 50 countries, typically you've done this yourself. You've gone out and deployed on-premise equipment to connect your global users to the same extension dialing format, and you've had to be the expert as far as, can I get voice in this certain country? Can I get carrier relationship in another country? And really, at that point, if you're a multinational global corporation, or you're in the multiple thousands of end users looking for a new communication system, really start talking to the folks who have done this before, right? So either you can do it yourself, and especially in the Teams world, right, you're looking at multiple pieces of equipment, session border controllers, SIP trunks. There's a lot that goes into doing voice into Teams yourself around the globe. But whether you go with Teams or whether you go with a straight UCAS play, talking to UCAS vendors who have deployed services in the countries that you find important or that you are expanding into is just as important as anything else that we've talked about in this evaluation process. You don't want to be their first customer in expanding globally. You absolutely want to be with someone who's done this before. They've done it at the scale and the size that you are presenting to them, that you're familiar with their support process, and you are familiar with how they are routing voice around the globe, where their data centers are, the high availability and the disaster recovery of those data centers, and how reliable are they as far as doing what you're asking, and who have they done it with previously? Those are very important things to start vetting out in addition to everything else that we've already talked about.
Large global enterprises are pretty familiar with this stuff. They've probably done their own voice before, and you've been telling me about the role of the trusted advisor in this. Why would the global enterprise not want to proceed in this direction the way they always have in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in the 6 months of research that I've been looking at the different Microsoft integrations and providers in this ecosystem, it's certainly possible to do it yourself. I just think that the Microsoft architecture and the services that they offer are, you're really going to have to do a lot yourself, more so than I think you've done in the past. So let's break down the components, right, of do-it-yourself Microsoft Teams voice. First you're going to have to enable the phone system, right? So you have to pay extra for Microsoft to do that. You're going to have to host your own session border controllers, right? This is a piece of equipment that basically facilitates the transfer of voice packets from their origination to their destination. So multiple expensive session border controllers around the globe. You're then going to have to go procure your own SIP trunks. Now that's not a new thing, but it's still something extra for the IT team to do, right? It's something taking them away from other important activities. So you're running your own session border controllers. You're out procuring SIP trunks globally. You're going to need to have a certified full-time employee that understands Microsoft and specifically the phone system, probably multiple. If you're a large global organization, you're going to need more than one person that understands how to administer, how to change, how to fix problems as they come up. Or you're going to have to pay for that support, right? So whether you have that expertise in-house, or you're going to have to leverage a certified partner, right, for on-demand support. You're also going to have someone who can program PowerShell, right? That's the programming language that Teams has dictated as far as creating users and mapping those users to a dial plan and to extensions. That's a lot to handle, right, for a global enterprise. And most enterprises that we talk to, they want to get away from doing all that. They have done it in the past, like you said, but they don't want to do that anymore, right? The cloud has enabled this to be far easier than the on-prem world and all of the things that we just talked about. And so it's people are looking for less work, not the same work. And a cloud-based system really should enable less work. And I think that's where the vendors, the integrators that we've talked to, people that provide direct routing as a service, they've gone to the lengths to create this environment. They've procured the session border controllers. They have the Microsoft certified employees and expertise. They have the SIP trunks, right? They're global PSTN providers today. They've done that work for you so that you don't have to recreate this wheel that you've been doing for years and years already. But it's about finding the right one. Who has the right PSTN connectivity? Who has the best SLA or high availability, right? The Microsoft SLA is probably not going to be acceptable to most global enterprises. So who is going to provide the services into Teams, if that's your chosen interface? Who's going to make this easier for me and my IT team so we can work on the hundreds of other projects that are being thrown at us by the company? And how can I make my life easier while still providing a great voice experience for my users around the globe? Those are the type of questions that I'm hearing from large enterprises. And I think those are the type of questions specifically that the vendor ecosystem here at AVANT has done a great job at addressing. They all just address it in different ways. And it takes discovery and time to evaluate who's offering his best for your specific corporate situation.
All right. Brent Wilford, Director of Cloud Engineering here at AVANT Communications. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great job, my friend.
Thanks, Ken. Good talking to you.
You've been listening to AVANT Technology Insights, featuring information and opinions on how key technologies can be leveraged to solve business problems. AVANT Technology Insights is a service of AVANT Communications, a platform for IT decision-making. All opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests and the host. For more information, please feel free to download our research reports and other resources at www.goavant.net. That's www.goavant.net. For AVANT Research and Analytics, this is Ken Presti.